Good morning, everyone. Good morning. We are going to wait for a couple of minutes just for people to come on, and then we will make a start. Good morning, everyone. I trust that you are all well. Lovely to see you today. Apologies, there was a bit of traffic, so I am the nomad, the traveling Jew. So today, I'd like to discuss about the fact that Jacob had a dream. You know, we know from Freud, from others, dreams are very important. And in fact, if you don't have a dream for 3 days, the Talmud tells us that you should be concerned. And if a person has a dream that's troubling, and that dream, if you had a troubling dream and it occurred 3 times, then you would have to do, say, a special formula to nullify it. We consider what happens to us in dreams quite considerable, quite important. So let me just say good morning, Clarice, Peter, Deborah, Caroline, Carol, Rachel, David, and all those that are still joining us. Wonderful to see you. So the dreams that we have often reflect what are our thoughts, our emotions, our feelings, what's on our minds. And Jacob, we know, lay down and he had this epic encounter and a dream about the exile and the celestial beings were going up and down. And what's interesting is we're told by Rashi, we're told by the commentator, why is it that the angels were going up and down, literally above him? And the reason that's given is because this was the time for the changing of the guard. You see, there are celestial beings. We are surrounded. We don't see them, but they are there nonetheless, by celestial beings, and they protect us. But when he was moving from Israel, then the celestial beings that were entrusted to guard him in Israel were going to change places with those which were entrusted to guard him.
Being job, right? So therefore it was the changing of the guard. Now the only problem and question about that is we would expect that the angels that were going to change place, right, the angels of outside of Israel would change place on the border, right, on the boundary, on the perimeter. That's where we would expect them to change places with those of Israel. You don't have border control in the middle of Israel. Jacob's dream was in Bet El. It was in the middle of Israel, right? It wasn't on the borders. So if that's the case, why is it we have the changing of the guard? The angels were changing from outside, from the diaspora. Those angels were now changing place with those of the angels of Israel when he was still in the middle of Israel. And the Chidor, I believe, says something absolutely fascinating. One of my favorite ideas. He says that, friends, you are where your mind is. If your thoughts are already about being outside of Israel, that's where you are. Not physically, not geographically, but psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. Jacob's mind was already focused on his mission, and therefore he was focused on outside of Israel. And if that's where your mind is, then that's where we see you, and therefore the celestial beings were changed places now between those of Israel and outside of Israel. And this idea that we have to think about where we are is where our minds are. And sometimes you can be with someone, it's very interesting, and you ask yourself, am I really with them? Where are they now? What are they thinking of? What are they dreaming about? You know, they tell the story about the Ponevezher, one of the great heroes of Israel, survived the Holocaust, came to Israel, came to Bnei Barak, a complete wasteland in those days. There wasn't even Coca-Cola. And he stood on a hill. And some people came to see him, this religious looking Jew, and they wanted to know what he was doing. And he was gesticulating with his hand. He was walking paces. And they said, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, I'm measuring things up." He says, "Well, this is where the study hall is going to be. This is where the base of medrash is going to be. And this is where the boarding facilities are going to be for the yeshiva students. And this is where the yeshiva students are going to eat, the chadar ochel, the dining room, right? I'm working out the measurements and the plans for the new yeshiva that I'm going to build." And they said to him, "With respect, maybe you're not well, but you're delusional. You've lost your mind. We're in the aftermath of the Holocaust. The ashes of the Holocaust are all around us. There is nothing here. This is a wasteland. What are you dreaming about? There aren't even any students. Hitler decimated. Our nation is nothing. We're not going to be anything. What are you thinking? Just worry about getting on with a daily grind." And you know what he said to them, friends? You know what he said? He said, "Some people dream with their eyes closed. I dream with my eyes open." Very often the things that we dream about at night, they never come to fruition. They remain aspirations, dreams, hopes. And we wake up in the morning, we say over the dream, and that's it. It doesn't carry forward. But when you're the Ponovitch Arov, he dreamed constantly. He thought big. And that was during his daily life. And therefore, even though it was a complete wasteland, it was literally a barren hill in Bnei Brak, he said to himself, "I can see already." He didn't see a barren hill. He saw a vibrant yeshiva. The only thing that was missing was the resources and the materials and the boys. But that was a mere detail. He was prepared to to give his all and to make it happen. And that's why it became a reality. If you dream big, then it can become a reality. But if you dream small, the maximum is that you're going to achieve relatively small things. It's a wonderful message that I often have. A few months ago, I saw the Sifrei Torah in the shul, just to give a little insight. And, they're deteriorating. Some of the older ones, they're pre-war, they're getting on. We've got a few in decent condition, but many of them are really, really wearing out. The letters are fading, the parchment's tearing. It was a sorry state. And I thought to myself, listen, why don't we try? Why don't we at least try and see? I know there's COVID. I know we're in a pandemic. I know everyone's not feeling great, but let's try and write a Sefer Torah. And we're not going to allow one person to donate. We're going to try and include as many people from the community as possible. Friends, that's exactly what we did. We dreamed big. You dreamed big. And thank God it's now a reality. And within the next 2 weeks, that Sefer Torah will be making its way from the Holy Land to the Holy Woodside Park. And we look forward to having the dedication and the celebration. But my point is that this is a case in hand in our own community of how we can, in our own lives, think big, dream big, and live big. Wishing you all well. Have a great day. Please God, we'll see you tomorrow.